Hello again, or if you're new, welcome. And welcome back to Chaos Head Noah, where we just found out that our stalker girlfriend is actually just investigating our connection to the New Gen murders. So, let's hop into Chapter 2 and get some answers. Vroom, vroom, quick, get on if you're going on the field trip. All aboard! Lying face down on the floor, Nishijo Takumi held a colored pencil in his hand. The one he was currently using was yellow, having switched from a red one only a few minutes ago. He joyously ran his pencil across the spread out sketchbook, which he was nearly lying on top of. Takumi loved drawing pictures. He would always doodle on the edge of his notes during every lesson at school. The morning news had been left running in the background, but since news and the like was boring to a fourth grader like Takumi, he did not pay it any mind. Vroom vroom, candy, get your candy here, only 300 yen. He was drawing a yellow bus and pretending he was the driver. All ashore that's going ashore, we're heading out, vroom. As he imagined the scene in his head, he made it actually happen in the picture. Times where he'd get too excited and accidentally draw on the tatami beneath him were not exactly infrequent. Nanami, who would always read manga beside him, would scold him each time he did it. She had some nerve considering she was the little sister, usually saying things along the lines of, "Oh, come on, don't get the floor all dirty." Even so, Takumi never became any less immersed in his art. However, when he got to the point of drawing the people in the window, his hand suddenly stopped. Then he ripped up the sketchbook and threw it away. On the previous day, on the day where the autumn field trip had only been one more day away, Takumi had suddenly been told by his parents that he couldn't go, even though it had been something he had been looking forward to for a very long time. So much so that he had been in a constant state of excitement for the entire day, wanting the next to arrive as soon as possible. That cruel declaration from his parents was something Takumi absolutely could not accept. He kicked and screamed, saying he would definitely go no matter what, but it was no use. His parents would not listen no matter what he said, choosing only to repeat the same words again and again. "You just can't. We're doing this for you, Takumi." Takumi sank into his bed and trembled with so much frustration. He was very close to ripping his futon to shreds. He resented his parents from the bottom of his heart. For Takumi, that field trip had been a big, big event that could not have come soon enough. Everyone else in his class could go, but he alone was not allowed to. From his perspective, that was beyond unreasonable. Takumi was in a lonely world. Everyone else was in a super fun world. To him, it felt like he alone had been completely cut off from it. He could not forgive the teacher, his classmates, anyone. They had all left him behind. And he especially could not forgive his parents for their sudden, unfair decision. Those feelings transformed into pure hatred towards his parents and towards all of his classmates. Takumi bit his lip hard enough to draw blood. He muttered curses at them over and over. I don't think anyone should be allowed to go. The following morning arrived. The phone had been ringing over and over again since dawn. Each time his mother would pick up the phone, she seemed to be very shaken while talking. Takumi could not get even a wink of sleep. The clock passed 9 a.m. In her usual well-behaved manner, Nanami was sitting on a floor cushion, reading manga. She had told Takumi the day before, "I'm going to take a break from school to keep you company, Kay," as if she thought it was the obvious thing for her to do. Their father had already gone to work, so he was not around. Their mother was very busy with the phone calls and had yet to prepare breakfast. There was no need for him to go to school that day. Sullen as he was, Takumi opened his sketchbook and began drawing to distract himself. His feelings of rage refused to subside, so he tore up the sketchbook in frustration. As he did that, however...
あれこのバス
Huh? That bus? Nanami sounded puzzled. Takumi had thought she was talking about his picture, but her gaze was actually aimed at the TV.
ねえお母さん
Hey, Mommy! Nanami called out loudly to her mother, who was still busy with the phone calls. Now listening, Takumi followed his sister's gaze and stared vacantly at the TV screen. The screen displayed a scene of a collapsed elevated highway. A section that was only about 50 meters long had fallen. Regrettably, a bus driving along there at the time had been caught up in the collapse, toppling onto its side beneath the overpass. It was the very same bus that Takumi should have been on, the bus his classmates were riding on. From just a single glance, Takumi could imagine exactly what had happened. His classmates were on screen. One child was sobbing, another had blood all across their forehead, and another was lying atop a stretcher being carried into an ambulance. The reporter was announcing the state of the accident with a grave look on their face, but Takumi did not really understand what they were talking about.
タクちゃん、大変よ。
Taka-chan, it's awful. His mother was standing at the entrance to the room, holding a cordless phone. Her face was pale.
遠足のバスが高速道路で事故に遭っちゃったんだって。
The bus for the field trip was in an accident on the highway.
それ、今テレビでやってる。
It's on TV right now.
それで、斉藤先生が。
And Mr. Saito died. For some reason, Takumi was already sure of this. Everything happening on the TV was eerily similar to what he had pictured in his head the night before, when he had been overwhelmed by frustration and hatred. There was only one feeling that occupied the depths of his mind, particular conviction, one where he was sure that he had precognitive abilities. Long ago, a show on TV that examined people who claimed to have ESP had been etched into Takumi's mind. A person with precognitive abilities had appeared on the show, shocking the world by demonstrating frightening ESP in the experiment. The experiment verified whether or not the psychic could guess which of 12 items were placed in which numbered box. They did this by placing the subject in a different room, then proceeding to have them predict which cards with the item name on them belonged to which box. Afterwards, staff members in the other room would place the actual items into boxes, then verify how many the psychic foretold. The person on the show received an incredible 90% correct, causing an uproar among the entertainers. As this happened, Takumi tested if he could predict things the same way the psychic on TV did, only to get every single one correct. Of course, he did not tell anyone about this. So as he gazed up at the TV, he believed that the accident was yet another instance of his precognitive predictions being exactly right.
クラスの半数以上の子が怪我したらしくて。
It sounds like over half the class is injured.
なんてこと。
Oh, how awful. His mother tried hugging him as he lay down, but Takumi avoided her grasp and crawled to the corner of the room.
でも、本当によかったわ。
But I'm so relieved. Her eyes swam about as she whispered in a hollow voice.
今日、タクちゃんを休ませておいて、本当によかった。
I'm so relieved that I made you stay home, Taka-chan. Takumi felt sick. They were useless, he thought to himself. His abilities had not made a single difference. Just thinking about it made his heart turn to ice in an instant. After that, Takumi stopped speaking to others for a while. He quite literally went mute. He did not say a single word to another soul. His parents worried about him, and their already overprotective habits escalated even further. Finding them to be acting more and more ridiculous, Takumi thus decided to play the role of a mute boy. He thought of it as revenge against them. Due to his complete lack of talking, his mother took him to be seen in the psychiatry ward of the general hospital, and there he was diagnosed with PTSD. Since Takumi did not actually have PTSD or anything of the sort, he never once took his medicine, he merely pretended to. His parents never realized he was acting, and in the end, he didn't even feel a hint of pity as they worried themselves sick over him. Everything felt like a lie. The world was filled with falsities. It was overflowing with malice. It was out to get me.
いつもあなたが使っているチャットルームへログインして自分で調べてみてください。
Please log into the chat room you always use and take a look.
私の言っていることが間違っていないってわかるはずです。
Then you'll understand that what I'm saying is true.
それと
And
私が言ったことは全部本心です。これだけは信じて。
everything I said, it was all genuine. I hope you can at least believe me about that. After bombarding me with her nonsensical theories, Yua had said that one last thing before she'd left. There was no way I could believe her. How the hell was I supposed to believe someone that had been lying to me this entire time? I refused to believe that everything there was me, like Yua had said. Everything she'd said about me being Shogun was a total joke. I wanted to believe that. But when I checked the timestamps in the chat log, there was no mistaking that the conversation wasn't matching up.
僕は無遊病なの？
Have I been sleepwalking? Problem was, during the time Shogun appeared to be posting in chat, I hadn't been sleeping at all. If I recalled correctly, I had indeed been at Cafe at the time, but I hadn't slept, so I couldn't have been sleepwalking. In that case, I wondered why I didn't have any memories of posting as Shogun. Maybe my body was being controlled by someone else, which would mean... No, that's ridiculous. I felt that the best way to calm myself down was to escape from reality into the fictional world of ESO. In ESO, everything was fake. A lie. At the end of the day, its world was just part of a video game. But in Basilard, I could become the godlike existence known as Neidhart. A fabrication like that, a lie like that, was something I'd readily accept. I wanted to stay there. Nobody would mind if I did, would they? Or maybe the world of ESO was actually the real world, and my own reality was the fake one. Just a game. In that case, Nishijo Takumi would be a fictional character, and Neidhart would be my true form.
ねえ、ナイトハルト。
Hey, Neidhart. I called out to the paladin standing inside the monitor. Was I controlling you, or were you controlling me? Which was it? Could you be real, and I a mere avatar? What if the world I was in was just a video game in and of itself? If that were true, that would solve every mystery I was struggling with. What if, just like how I was staring at Neidhart within my monitor, what if someone was staring at me in the exact same way? Whose eyes are those eyes? That would make them the player controlling me. If I did have someone controlling me, would it kill them to do less of a shit job? Though I guess an avatar couldn't really complain. It would also explain how Shogun and I could be the same person, validating that theory. Come to think of it, it was kind of like what Lieselot was. Neidhart and Lieselot couldn't possibly exist in Basilard at the same time. I was the only one playing as them after all. Maybe Shogun and Nishijo Takumi were similar and couldn't exist in the world at the same time. It was also possible that it was a bug. Speaking of bugs, encountering that bizarre girl in a murder case, as well as a whole bunch of other stuff that had happened, could have been bugs too. The image Shogun had sent me flashed through my mind. I gripped my head with my hands and frantically shook it away. I wanted to run away from everything. Maybe, just maybe, there was a player controlling me. Please reset me already. Just remake my character and start from scratch, please. The waiting room of the university hospital was filled to the brim with middle-aged people waiting to be examined. The view hadn't changed from a few years prior. It almost made me feel as if time itself had stopped there. Moreover, everyone there looked miserable, and the smell of disinfectant pervaded the stagnant air. It was the kind of place that sucked all the life out of you and made you wish for the sweet embrace of death in 5 minutes tops. I didn't like hospitals. The way the lobbies had countless people, yet the corridors beyond felt completely devoid of them, it always freaked me out ever since I was a little kid. It almost felt like the corridors themselves absorbed and stewed in the stench of death. I always felt like that was what a hospital truly represented beyond its outer facade. I even thought that some horrifying creature was lying in wait deep within the corridors. That was why I really didn't want to go there. But there was something I had to make sure of no matter what, so I found myself reluctantly waiting my turn in line for an examination. Even when I tried to fully immerse myself in ESO, the bombshell that Yua had dropped on me continued to swirl around and around inside my head, and I hadn't been able to concentrate for even a second. As a result, my mind had been torturing me with all the various possibilities all the way until morning, and I'd become genuinely scared that something was wrong with me. That was why I went to the hospital, to get an official stamp of approval from a medical professional that said Nishijo Takami is completely normal. I wanted to prove that it wasn't me who was abnormal, but Yua. I was used to coming to the hospital psych ward, and yet when the grill at the reception asked, "Is this your first time?" I nodded without thinking. Ever since that bus accident, my mother had regularly taken me here for checkups. During middle school, my physician said that I'd completely recovered, and I stopped going after that. This was my first time coming back in about 4.5 years. We'll go through the good delusion first. My first physician had been some senile professor who was supposed to have some authority in the field, but I'd only seen him a few times, and after that, someone else had taken over, a student of his or something. Although, despite calling himself the other guy's student, he hadn't been particularly young. To be honest, he'd looked pretty old. The night before, I was reminded of something that Dr. Takashina had said.
ここは病気や怪我だけじゃなくて心にも効く病院なんだよ。
This hospital isn't just for physical injuries, but also for mental ones. I hated hospitals, but that doctor had always been very nice. He'd left a good impression on me, and I thought he was a good person. Well, even then, I'd still thoroughly fooled all the adults to the very end. That is, except Dr. Takashina. He'd seen through it all, and he was the one that declared me completely recovered.
あの人に調べてもらえれば。
If I can get him to examine me. I wonder what he'd say if he learned that I'd become an otaku freak. Nah, there was no way he'd remember me after all this time. It didn't take long for me to be called into the examination room. I'd expected to be waiting there for quite a while, but I guess I was wrong. Why had there been so many people in the lobby then? Maybe they were being paid to sit there just to make it look busy. It was a different examination room than the one from 4 years ago, but when I stepped inside, I was welcomed with a face I remembered clearly.
いやー、西条くん。
Hey there, Nishijo-kun. Dr. Takashina rose to his feet with a familiar smile, then reached his hand out to me. Realizing he was searching for a handshake, I hurriedly reciprocated.
また君に会えて嬉しいよ。
It's so delightful seeing you again.
いや、嬉しいというのは変かな。
Well, I suppose delightful might be a strange way of putting it.
君にしてみれば、またここに来るというのは辛いことなわけだからね。
After all, he must be having a really hard time for you to come back here again. Despite it being 4 years since we'd last seen each other, he was incredibly friendly. My slight nervousness that I'd been struggling with was eased in seconds.
それで、今日はどうしたんだい？
So, what brings you here today? He gestured for me to sit down, so I did. Likely due to all the tension melting away, I told him everything about what had happened to me, and what might happen to me in the future. I stumbled over my words many times, probably because I wasn't used to talking so much, but Dr. Takashina didn't rush me. He listened to me intently with a serious look on his face, while offering occasional interjections to make sure I knew he was following. Of course, I also told him everything about Yua and the demon girl. I considered that doing so might be dangerous, but right now he was the only person I could rely on.
結論から先に言おうか。
Well then, that should be enough for me to tell you what's wrong. After hearing everything I had to say, Dr. Takashina pondered for a moment, then began to speak.
君は正常だよ。
Nothing. You are perfectly normal.
何の問題もない。
There's nothing wrong with you at all.
本当ですか？
Are you sure?
もちろん。
Of course. Those were the words I'd wanted to hear more than anything. I dragged myself to the hospital for the sole purpose of hearing them. I was scared that he'd tell me there was something wrong with me, and I had no idea what I would have done if he had. Getting checked out by Dr. Takashina had been the right choice after all.
むしろ、おかしいのはその楠木さんという女性だね。
Rather, the one who may have something wrong with her is that girl you mentioned, Kusunoki-san.
西条くんの話だけで判断するのは難しいが、おそらくその女性は精神的な障害を患っているだろう。
It's difficult to judge from your story alone, but that girl may be suffering from some kind of mental disability.
今後、君に危険を及ぼすような行動に出る可能性がある。
There's a real possibility that she will take actions that will endanger you.
すぐに警察に通報しよう。
As such, we ought to inform the police as soon as possible.
Eh?
Huh? The police? True, that was probably the safest option. He was right. There had to be something wrong with Yua. He was batshit insane. The thought of her stalking me again sent shivers down my spine.
もちろん、僕も責任を持って君を保護するつもりだ。
Of course, I intend to take full responsibility for your safety. Looking at me with a powerful, reassuring gaze, Dr. Takashina clapped his hand on my shoulder encouragingly. He even handed me his business card, complete with his phone number.
何か問題が起きたらいつでも連絡をくれて構わないよ。
Any problems occur, do not hesitate to contact me at any time.
24時間、いつでも君のところに飛んでいくからね。
I'll be available 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Just give me a call and I'll be there in a jiffy.
いいんですか？
Uh-huh. Are you sure?
当たり前だよ。
Absolutely. You needn't even ask.
僕は君の主治医なんだから。
I am your primary physician, after all. I was on the verge of tears. I was truly grateful to be under his care. From the bottom of my heart. Doctors as good as him were hard to find nowadays.
悪魔女のことについても通報した方が良さそうだね。
Regarding the demon girl, it would be best to report her as well, don't you think?
西条くん、君の見たその女がニュージェネの真犯人で間違いないよ。これはものすごい目撃証言だ。
Ishijo-kun, the girl you saw must be the true culprit of New Gen. There's no mistaking it. You carry an incredible witness testimony. Dr. Takashina seemed somewhat excited, but you couldn't tell from his tone. As always, he spoke calmly.
事件は西条くんのおかげで解決だ。
Those cases will all be resolved thanks to you, Nishijo-kun.
君は渋谷のヒーローだよ。
You're the hero of Shibuya.
僕はこの瞬間に立ち会えて実に光栄に思う。
I feel beyond honored to be standing here before you at this very moment. I was a hero? This wasn't ESO. There was no way someone like me could be a hero. No way in hell. But when I imagined it, my face just broke into a grin. High school girls, college girls, MILFs, all of them would be screaming my name and how much they love me. I'd be renowned all over the world as one of the most charismatic people to ever live. Being a TV celebrity sounded cool and all, but I didn't want to appear in front of people, so I'd create a startup company instead. Then I'd become a hugely charismatic boss making the big bucks. I'd be surrounded by a harem of beautiful secretaries serving my every need, and of course, I'd trip all their flags and make them go crazy. I'd have a high-rise apartment in Roppongi, and hire a bunch of cute maids. It'd be like my own personal maid cafe. Of course, I'd be indulging in the endlessly passionate nightly services. Just kidding.
まさに勝ち組。
One at life. I abruptly came to my senses, only to find myself sitting on a sofa in the lobby. Unable to grasp what exactly was going on, I frantically looked around the room. Beside me was a hunched-over old lady. Her eyes were covered in wrinkles, so I couldn't tell whether she was asleep or awake. I took a look at the clock above the reception desk, and I saw that I'd been waiting in the lobby for a full hour. Had that all just been a dream? I hadn't slept last night, so had I dozed off while waiting? How glorious would it be if that dream was actually real? Talk about disappointing. In the end, I found myself waiting for another 2 hours before my name was finally called. When I entered the examination room, it almost felt like the same events I'd seen in that dream were happening again. Dr. Takashina even appeared almost exactly like he had in the dream. It was probably just that he'd barely changed since the last time I saw him 4 years ago. But this time he didn't rise from his seat, nor did he offer to shake my hand.
今日はどうしました?
How can I help you today? And unlike the dream, he didn't seem especially happy to see me again. This time we'll do the negative delusion. My first physician had been some senile professor who was supposed to have some authority in the field, but I'd only seen him a few times, and after that, someone else had taken over, a student of his or something. Although, despite calling himself the other guy's student, he hadn't been particularly young. To be honest, he looked pretty old. The night before, I was reminded of something that Dr. Takashina had said.
ここは病気や怪我だけじゃなくて心にも効く病院なんだよ。
This hospital isn't just for physical injuries, but also for mental ones. I hated hospitals, but that doctor had been very nice to me. He'd left a good impression on me, and I thought he was a good person. Well, even then, I'd still thoroughly fooled all the adults to the very end. That is, except Dr. Takashina. He'd seen through it all, and he's the one that had declared me completely recovered.
あの人に調べてもらえれば。
If I can get him to examine me. I wondered what he'd say if he learned that I'd become an otaku freak. Nah, there was no way he'd remember me after all this time. It didn't take long for me to be called into the examination room. I'd expected to be waiting there for quite a while, but I guess I was wrong. Why had there been so many people in the lobby then? Maybe they were being paid to sit there just to make it look busy. It was a different examination room than the one from 4 years ago, but when I stepped inside, I was welcomed with a face I remembered dearly.
やあ、西条くん。
Hey there, Nishijo-kun. Dr. Takashina looked at me with a beaming smile. He hadn't changed a bit after 4 years. Feeling relieved, everything I was thinking spilled out all at once.
先生、助けて。
Doctor, help me.
どうしたんだい?
What's wrong?
変な女が僕にストーカー行為を。
A strange girl is stalking me.
このままじゃ学校にも行けないし、家にも一度来られて場所知られてるから安心できないし。
If I don't get help soon, I won't be able to go to school, and I won't be able to go to home either, and I can't relax anywhere she might find me.
落ち着いて。
Calm down, Nishijo-kun.
落ち着いてなんていられないよ。
I can't just calm down.
あの女異常だ。僕は正常なんだ。それに岩だけじゃない。悪魔女だって。
There's something wrong with that demon girl. I'm perfectly normal, and not just you, that demon girl.
そうだ、悪魔女が真犯人なんだ。
Yeah, that demon girl. That demon girl is the true culprit.
真犯人？
True culprit?
ニュージェネの犯人だよ。
The new gen culprit.
間違いないんだ。僕は事件現場で死体を貼り付けにしてる最中のあの女を見たんだ。
There's no doubt about it. I was at the scene of the crime when the corpse was being crucified, and I saw that girl.
大丈夫だ。何も心配いらないから。
Everything's gonna be alright. You needn't worry.
とにかく落ち着こう。いいね。
But for now, let's take a deep breath and relax. How does that sound? Having been admonished by him, I stopped talking. I didn't understand how he knew everything would be alright, but he was a professional, not to mention Dr. Takashina, so I guess he must be right. That was what I told myself. My breathing was ragged, likely thanks to getting so worked up. I took a deep breath. Dr. Takashina stared fixedly at me. What concerned me, however, was that the look on his face was pretty serious.
本当に大丈夫なの？
Is everything really gonna be alright?
もちろんだよ。
Of course.
あんな危ない女が僕を、狙ってるのに。
Even though such a dangerous girl is coming after me?
なんでそう言い切れるの？
How can you say that? For sure.
理由を知りたいかい？
Would you like to know why? When I nodded, he lightly shrugged his shoulders. He spun the pen in his hand around his fingers, likely out of habit.
なぜなら、君の言っている女の人は、
Well, it's quite simple. After all, that girl
この世には存在しないからだよ。
does not exist in this world.
でも
What? But
君は自分の妄想に怯えているだけなんだ。
you're merely terrified of your own delusion. His tone was so gentle it was eerie. I started trembling all over. I couldn't stop it. Why was this happening? Even though Dr. Takashina was being so nice, he...
西条くん、君はその女の人には会っていない。わかるね？
Nishijo-kun, have you never seen that girl in reality? Do you understand?
わからないよ。
No, I don't.
じゃあ、もっと具体的に言おうか。
Well, how about I put it more clearly?
君はその女の人には会えるはずがないんだ。
There is no conceivable way that you could have seen that girl.
もう7年間も君は
Because
この病院から
for the past 7 years,
一歩も
you've never
外に
taken a single step
出ていないんだからね。
out of this hospital. What the fuck? Huh? Huh? What the hell was he?
君はこの病院の精神科に7年間入院している。そのことはわかるだろう？
You've been hospitalized in the psychiatry ward here for 7 years. You are aware of this, yes? Aware of... What the hell was he talking about? How could he casually spout off such insane bullshit with a smile on his face? I inadvertently glanced down at the clothes I was wearing. When I'd come to the hospital, I was wearing a denim long-sleeve shirt on top of a blood-tuned t-shirt, along with the only pair of jeans I had. That was the outfit I should be wearing. But for some reason, I was now wearing a hospital gown? A one-piece colored a pale yellowish green. A simple piece of clothing tied together with a cord that hung in front. I wasn't even wearing shorts down below. When had I changed clothes?
ここは閉鎖病棟だからお見舞いの人も来ない。
This is an isolated hospital ward, where no visitors are allowed.
入院患者さんも男女で別フロアに分けられていて行き来はできない。
Hospitalized patients are divided into different floors by gender, and you cannot go between them.
精神科の看護師は全員男だし、
Every nurse in this psychiatry ward is a man.
君の病室は完全に個室。窓もない。
Your hospital room houses only you. There are no windows either.
つまり、君は7年間女性と接触したことがないんだ。君の家族も含めてね。
In other words, you've not had contact with a single woman in 7 years, including your own family.
思い出したかな？
Do you remember now? He was lying. He had to be. I hadn't been hospitalized at all. I was living on my own in Shibuya. I was a pretty well-known high-level player in ESO, and I even went to school. Sure, I only went in accordance with my minimum attendance chart, but that was still 2 to 3 times a week. I'd even just had a fairly professional, cordial chat with the nurse at the reception desk. Is this your first time here? Yes, it is. Alright, then please fill out this form as you wait.
嘘に決まってる。
You have to be lying. You have to.
本当にそう思うのかい？
Do you truly believe that? As he murmured that, Dr. Takashina scribbled something on the medical form he was holding. I couldn't tell what he was writing. It wasn't Japanese. Was it English? No. German?
だとしたら、君の精神はまだ異常だっていうことだよ。
If so, your mental state still must be abnormal.
もうしばらくは入院が必要だね。
We'll have to ensure you remain hospitalized here for a while longer. He gave me a single fleeting glance. His eyes were full of pity, even though he'd never looked at me in such a way before. I collapsed to my knees helplessly. Tears poured from my eyes. Oh, I see. It all made sense now. All of my memories up until now had just been delusions. It was me all along. I was the crazy one. What a cruel twist that was. Then again, it wasn't like I cared anymore. Even if they were delusions, they weren't fond memories anyway. And I mean, I could just make new ones, right? This time, a world without scary murders happening around me would be nice. I'd have a sociable personality, get good grades, and have some crazy talent. I'd be super popular with the ladies. My friends would all be hotties as hot as the hottest swimsuit models, and what's more, everyone would love the ever-loving shit out of me. Then I'd propose that we should all start living under the same roof, and after that, my new life would begin. It wouldn't be easy, and would have its ups and downs, but it'd be fun. There'd even be a bit of slapstick thrown in there. Forced myself to laugh. My face twitched. I wanted to die. I abruptly came to my senses, only to find myself sitting on the sofa in the lobby. A nasty sweat covered my entire body. A chill ran down my spine. Unable to grasp exactly what was going on, I frantically looked around the room. Beside me was a hunched-over old lady. Her eyes were covered in wrinkles, so I couldn't tell whether she was asleep or awake. I took a look at the clock above the reception desk, and I saw that I'd been waiting in the lobby for a full hour. Had that all just been a dream? I hadn't slept last night, so had I dozed off while waiting? I gave a deep sigh of relief. It had been a bad dream. It had been a dream, right? I tried remembering everything that had happened up until the day before. Nothing seemed out of place. My memories were continuous and consistent. I'd encountered the demon girl at the scene of the crime, and then I got deceived and subsequently threatened by Yua. Then I'd gone to the hospital to prove that I was of perfectly sound mind. Yep, everything added up. I wouldn't mind if it all ended up being a delusion, though. That way, creating another new delusional world that I could go nuts in would have been much, much better. The fact that I was even thinking that just went to show how utterly sick I was with everything that had been happening in my life recently. In the end, I found myself waiting for another 2 hours before my name was finally called. When I entered the examination room, it almost felt like the same events I'd seen in that dream were happening again. Dr. Takashina even appeared almost exactly like he had in the dream. It was probably just that he'd barely changed since the last time I saw him 4 years ago.
今日はどうしました？
How can I help you today? Dr. Takashina didn't say anything ridiculous like your memories are delusions this time, but this time we'll go with no delusion. My first physician had been some senile professor who was supposed to have some authority in the field, but I'd only seen him a few times, and after that, someone else had taken over, a student of his or something. Although, despite calling himself the other guy's student, he hadn't been particularly young. To be honest, he'd looked pretty old. The night before, I was reminded of something that Dr. Takashina had said.
ここは病気や怪我だけじゃなくて心にも効く病院なんだよ。
This hospital isn't just for physical ones, but also for mental ones. I hated hospitals, but that doctor had been very nice. He'd left a good impression on me, and I thought he was a good person. Well, even then, I'd still thoroughly fooled all the adults to the very end. That is, except Dr. Takashina. He'd seen through it all, and he was the one that had declared me completely recovered.
あの人に調べてもらえれば。
If I can get him to examine me. I wonder what he'd say if he learned that I'd become an otaku freak. Nah, there was no way he'd remember me after all this time. I had to wait 3 hours before my name was finally called. It was a different examination room than the one from 4 years ago, but when I stepped inside, I was welcomed with a face I remember dearly. The doctor was exactly what you'd think of when you imagined a kind old man. His face definitely looked older than most, yet also soft at the same time, and his demeanor only served to emphasize those qualities. He hadn't changed a bit since I'd last seen him 4 years ago. It almost made me wonder if he was physically incapable of getting any older, though I'd never known his actual age in the first place. The desire for me to latch onto him and never let go became stronger and stronger. I could rely on him. He could save me. I felt incredibly happy to see him again. But the first thing that came out of his mouth was,
今日はどうしました？
"How can I help you today?" His voice was indeed gentle and filled with a kindness to calm the hearts of others. However, it didn't carry the same familiarity that it had back when I'd been visiting the hospital regularly. It felt like he was only interacting with me on a purely professional level. So I couldn't help but tell him my name.
西条です。
Well, I'm Ishijo.
ん？ああ、これはご丁寧に。
Hmm? Ah, yes. Introductions are probably in order.
高階です。はじめまして。
My name is Dr. Takashina. It's a pleasure to meet you. He bowed his head cheerfully. I was lost for words. It's a pleasure to meet you. That was what he just said. He'd completely forgotten me. I shouldn't be surprised. It'd been 4 years after all. But I'd truly believed that Dr. Takashina of all people would remember me. Maybe that was arrogant, but I'd hoped for it all the same. Though my heart was overwhelmed with loneliness and emptiness when those expectations were smashed to pieces, it felt like my very existence was being denied. Dr. Takashina started talking to me while making eye contact, but I averted my eyes.
無遊病かどうか調べてほしいと書いてあるが、
It's written here that you wanted to check whether or not you've been sleepwalking, yes?
何かあったのかな？
Should I take that to mean something happened during your normal sleeping hours? Right, I'd written that on the questionnaire, but it was all meaningless now. He didn't remember me at all.
別にいいじゃん。
Who cares if he doesn't remember?
先生が覚えてようが覚えてなかろうが関係ないっしょ。最初の目的を忘れちゃダメ。
Whether he remembers you or not has nothing to do with anything, does it? Don't you dare go forgetting your mission. Oh, right. I didn't come here to meet with Dr. Takashina. I'd come here to prove that I was a completely healthy and sane human being. Our reunion was merely a bonus. Who gives a shit if he'd forgotten me? If Serotan hadn't stepped in and given me that advice, I would have come dangerously close to losing sight of myself.
あの自分でも知らないうちに外に出かけててパソコンで文章打っててそれを全く覚えてないなんてありえますか
Is unconsciously doing stuff, like going outside and typing sentences on my PC without remembering any of it? Can that kind of thing happen?
おお。
知り合いからそう指摘されて混乱しちゃって
Someone I know pointed it out to me, and I've been so confused.
その知り合いの人が冗談を言っているっていう可能性はあると思うかい？
Do you think there's a possibility that this person is merely playing a prank on you? Yua's eyes had been serious. It hadn't looked at all like she was messing with me. At the very least, I had no doubt that Yua believed what she said.
わかりません
I'm not sure.
なるほど。
I see.
ちなみに、その知り合いとはどういう関係だろう？恋人？
Also, what kind of relationship do you have with this person? A romantic one?
はあ
Where the hell did that come from? What did it have to do with anything? Was I missing something here?
あ、いや、言い方が悪かったかな。じゃあ言い直そう。
Ah, well, that might not have been a good way of putting it. I'll rephrase.
その知り合いの人は、君が意識もないまま歩き回っているのを実際に目撃したのかな？
Did this person you know actually witness you walking around while unconscious? Oh, so that's what he meant. I shook my head.
じゃあ、証拠はないわけだ。
So that means there's no evidence of it. I once again shook my head.
そいつ探偵気取りっていろいろ証拠を突きつけてきて
They acted like a detective, confronting me with evidence and stuff.
うん、そういうことか。
I see.
ちなみに、これまでにも無遊病の兆候はあったかい？
While we're on the topic, have you ever shown any signs of sleepwalking before now?
いえ
No.
朝目覚めたらいつものベッドじゃなくて違う場所で寝てたっていうことは過去に一度でもあった？
Have you ever experienced waking up in the morning, only to find yourself in a different location than you had gone to sleep in?
いえ
No.
じゃあその知り合いに言われたのが初めてっていうことだね。
So, that would mean that the event this person told you about is the first time you believe you've experienced it, correct? After nodding weakly, I steeled myself and spoke.
僕寝てないんです
I haven't slept.
もしかして怖いのかな？でもそんなに深刻になる必要はないよ。
Is that scaring you? If so, I assure you it isn't anything serious.
いやその
Oh, no, That's not what I meant. But I couldn't figure out how to explain it, and it was too late to say it out loud anymore. I was too flustered. After scribbling something on a medical form, Dr. Takashina swiveled away from me in his chair and leaned forward toward the back of the examination room.
葉月くん、ちょっと。
Hazuki-kun, a moment, please.
はい
Of course, doctor. The young nurse rushed over to him, and Dr. Takashina showed her the form. As he did so, he whispered for her to do something, and she quickly withdrew to the back of the room. What had that been about? The doctor turned back toward my puzzled self. Then, in a gentle voice, he began to explain to me how sleepwalking worked. When a person falls asleep, they begin non-REM sleep, before eventually progressing to REM sleep. Non-REM sleep is a deeper sleep where the brain hibernates and brain activity ceases. Meanwhile, REM sleep is a kind of sleep where the body is resting, but the brain is active in a state that's fairly close to being awake.
無遊病はノンレム睡眠の時に起きやすいって言われてる。
Sleepwalking is believed to more easily occur during non-REM sleep.
脳が通常の活動をしていないから、普通の受け答えとかは成立しにくいけど、ちゃんと返事もするし、階段などを踏み外さずに上り下りすることだってできる。
With the brain not performing its usual activities, it's difficult for it to formulate normal responses. It can still respond accurately to a certain degree, however, even allowing actions such as climbing up and down a staircase without a single misstep.
原因としては、精神的なストレスを抱えてる時になりやすいんだ。
One cause of it is when experiencing severe mental stress. It can easily occur then.
子供に多い症状だけど、成人でもよくある症状なんだよ。これでわかっただろ？深刻になることはないって言った意味が。
It's a common symptom in children, but it also often occurs in adults. That should explain it, yes? That's what I meant by it being nothing serious.
はあ、
Okay. But I hadn't been sleeping. Even though I hadn't been sleeping, I'd still done things I didn't remember. The times Shogun had been posting from room 37 in the chat room should have been when I was busy playing ESO. Could sleepwalking really be possible there? I wanted to ask him that, but he was already moving to a different topic.
無遊病かどうかを調べる方法としてはいくつかある。一番手っ取り早いのは、ここのベッドで寝てもらうことだね。
There are many ways to check whether or not you've been sleepwalking. As for the most quick and easy way, well, we'd have you lie down on this bed right here.
ただ、特定条件じゃないと発生しない場合もあるかもしれない。例えば、自分のベッドじゃないとダメとか。
However, there may be certain conditions that need to be met in order for it to occur. For example, it might not happen if you aren't lying in your own bed.
意識がない状態で出歩くにしても、目的もなくふらふらと歩き続けるのか。
While you may be walking around in an unconscious state, you could be walking around aimlessly.
それとも、何らかの脅迫観念があって、それに影響されて、何らかの一連の目的を持って出歩いているのか。
Or you could be being driven by something compulsive, leading you to walk around with a series of goals.
それに、君の精神状態についても、特定の条件下じゃないとダメかもしれない。自宅のベッドの上ならリラックスできるけど、ここじゃリラックスのしようがないわけだ。
Moreover, it could also require specific conditions in regards to your mental state. For example, you would be able to relax on your own bed at home, but you'd have no way of relaxing here.
どうする？とりあえず寝ていってみるかい？
Well, what do you think? Would you like to try sleeping here regardless? I had nothing to lose, so I didn't see a reason not to try. Then, after I proved I wasn't sleepwalking, I could try asking the real question I had in mind. The nurse from before, Hazuki-san or something, guided me over to the hospital bed located at the back of the room. And it wasn't a bed meant for sleeping, it was firm and uncomfortable. Then again, considering the sofa I usually slept on, that shouldn't pose any problems for me.
3時間くらいしたら起こしに来ますから。
I'll come to wake you up in about 3 hours from now. The nurse was pretty damn cute. As I lied on the bed, I took a quick peek at her face while being careful to avoid eye contact. Her baby face made her look kind of unreliable, and she even had this almost despondent aura about her, but she was doing her job pretty well. She felt like a heroine right out of a classic eroge, one with kinky hospital sex.
できるだけ目は離さないようにしていますので、安心して眠ってくださいね。
I'll make sure to keep a close eye on you, so please relax and have a nice rest, okay? Basically, if symptoms of sleepwalking occurred, like I started wandering around on my own, she'd make sure to take care of me.
それでは、ごゆっくり。
Well then, good night. After giving a slight smile, the nurse closed the curtain and left the hospital room. Now surrounded by a pure white curtain, I took a deep breath. All around me, I could hear the voices of doctors examining patients, the sounds of nurses running around, and the sound of the door to the examination room opening and closing. Yeah, I doubted I'd be able to relax here. Did I actually fall asleep like this? Figuring I had nothing to lose, I closed my eyes. No matter what I did, my mind refused to think of anything other than that corpse that had been massacred and crucified with stakes, as well as the gory pictures Shogun had sent me. So I forcibly conjured Seraton into my head.
Taki, 外出嫌いなのに病院来るなんてすごい。
Alright, we'll start with the good delusion. Taki, you're amazing for going to the hospital even though you hate going outside.
私前から思ってたんだけどさ、タッキーって実はすごく強い男の子だよね。
I've been thinking this for a while now, but like, you're actually super duper strong, aren't you, Taki? Sarah animatedly moved about in my delusion. Her cute voice chirped for me.
私、そんなタッキーの強さが好き。
I really love how strong you are.
それに、タッキーは無遊病なんかじゃないよ。私、毎日タッキーのこと見てるもん。だからわかるさ。
Also, Taki, you know you don't sleepwalk, right? I watch you every day, so of course I'd know. I'm a gosh darn Taki expert.
三次元女になんか騙されちゃダメだぞ。タッキーには私がいるっしょ。
You can't let those 3D girls trick you. Besides, you got me here, righto?
またあのコンテナハウスで二人きりで過ごそうね。ボケナス。
Let's spend time in that container house again. Just the two of us. You big dum-dum. Hehe, Seraton. You're so cute, Seraton. She really was my ideal waifu. There wasn't a single woman better than her. 3D? The fuck was that? Ugh, I want to go home already. I want to go home and have Seraton welcome me back with a smile. Wait for me, okay? I'll be coming home soon. You don't have to go home.
どういうこと？
What do you mean?
迎えに来たから。
You know, since I've come to get you. An incredibly realistic whisper reached my ears. It almost felt like something was poking my cheek. I slowly opened my eyes.
おはよ、ボケナス。
Morning, you big dum-dum. Beside the bed stood Seraton, pre-transformation Amanogawa Sera version. And she certainly wasn't at 1/8 scale. She was life-size, and she was moving smoothly. With a gulp, I sat up, then reached out to try and poke Seraton's breast.
おお！
They were squishy, voluptuous. She's no figure. She's the real deal. Seraton has joined the realm of 3D.
のんのん、ここは二次元だよ。
No, no, Sherry. This is 2D, of course. Wait, it is? Even though they're so squishy?
二次元的にプニプニなんさ。
It's 2D squishiness, silly. I didn't get what she meant, but as long as they were squishy, it wasn't like anything else mattered. I realized I'd touched her breast out of sheer surprise, and I rapidly grew embarrassed. The life-size Seraton was insanely cute, so Moe I could die, and most importantly of all, she was real. Thanks to that, the bashfulness that came from me touching her breast, and the fear of her potentially hating me for it, had become much stronger.
ごめん、セイラタン。
I'm sorry, Seraton.
タッキーならいいよ。
I don't mind if it's you, Taki.
本当？
Really?
他の人にはこんなことされるのは嫌だけどさ。
Yeah, Though I'd get real steamed if anyone else did something like that to me.
特に進むとか。あいつに胸触られたら金棒で月までぶっ飛ばしちゃってる。
Especially guys like Susumu. That guy ever tries to grab me, I'll smash his patootie right to the moon with my bat.
静かに。声出すと看護師さんたちに見つかっちゃうっしょ。
Shh, quiet now. If you're too loud, the nice nurse lady might find us. Seraton must have been being mindful of the world outside the curtain. Without making a sound, she then took off her shoes, climbed onto the bed, and then on top of me. Almost saying something out loud again, I hurriedly covered my mouth. Seraton was straddling me. Her panties underneath her skirt were pressing against my crotch. This was bad. My Johnson was about to go berserk. Seraton drew her face close to mine. A sweet aroma filtered into my nose. So that was how Seraton smelled.
ねえねえ、タッキー。
Hey, Taki, I've got an idea.
タッキーも二次元になっちゃうべきだよ。
You should become 2D too. What's that supposed to mean?
タッキーはまだ三次元なんさ。
Well, you're still 3D, aren't you?
だから私が二次元にしてあげる。
So I'm gonna make you 2D, just like me.
いいっしょ。
Sound good? Can you really do that?
できるよ。それに
Of course I can. Besides,
すっごく気持ちいいよ。
it feels super good. I could hear the sounds of nurses hurriedly walking about, as well as the voices of doctors examining other patients. We were in a place separated only by a single curtain. If that curtain were open, we'd get found out for sure. That heart-pounding thought, combined with the taboo nature of doing something like this in a hospital, I was getting lightheaded. And to think I was committing such obscene acts with my number one waifu. Ah, so this is what bliss is. All other thoughts had been pushed out of my mind, and so, in response to everything, Seraton said, I nodded.
そうこなくっちゃ。
Now that's the spirit?
そんなタッキーが好き。
That's what I love about Shiitake. Then Seraton firmly pressed her lips against mine. She was so soft. Was this the softness of 2D? Was it more soft than the real thing? This sudden borderline H scene turned my thoughts into pure spaghetti. I had no idea what the hell I should be doing. Then, in the face of my bewilderment, Seraton pushed her tongue between my lips, encroaching upon my mouth. It felt so good, I started to feel dizzy. To think a kiss would feel this amazing. Ah, I wanted her seductive swirling tongue to violate my mouth forever. My arms wrapped around her waist. She was very thin, since she was 2D and all, flat as a board, and yet squishy and voluptuous at the same time. Wasn't this basically the same as kissing paper, though? But it felt so incredibly good that I didn't care. Seraton was terra sexy. It was too much. It felt like I was gonna die. It was starting to get painful now. Seraton's suction was frighteningly strong. I tried pulling my tongue back, but I couldn't. It just sucked it in even more. He was pulling on it hard, so hard that it felt like it might rip off. And it wasn't just my tongue. The inside of my throat felt hot. My eyes felt like they were going to pop out of their sockets. I couldn't breathe. My chest hurt. The inside of my stomach churned and churned, turning into a pulpy, sopping mess. I was being sucked in. Everything inside my body, my organs, my flesh, my bones, they were all being sucked in by Seraton. I could feel my pounding heart rising up from my throat, the thick blood vessels tearing off one by one. It was an impossible sensation. It was incomprehensibly painful, and yet it felt even more pleasurable. My entire body had become an erogenous zone. Yes, my entire body. Not just the outside, but the inside of my throat, my heart, my blood vessels, my lungs, my intestines. Having Seraton violate the inside of my body, suck it all in and devour it whole, it made me so happy. And that happiness, and the sheer ecstasy I was feeling, it made me feel faint. I'm gonna die. It feels so good that I'm gonna die. After everything inside my body had been sucked out, Seraton pulled her lips away, satisfied. Her mouth was dripping with a mix of blood and drool.
タッキーのすごく美味しかった
Taki, you were so scrumptious. She gave a bewitching smile. I didn't have the energy to respond. She had taken everything I had. It was the first time I'd ever experienced such overwhelming pleasure. I was in a total haze. Fog enshrouded my consciousness and my thoughts were a blur.
ほらタッキー自分の体見てみて
Go on, Taki. Give your body a little look-see.
タッキーもこれで二次元の住人だよ
With this, you're now a permanent part of the 2D world. Although I was very unsteady, I tried to get off the bed and stand up. My body had become thin just like Seraton's. It was kinda hard to walk around. My body felt limp and I could hardly stand. I fell to my hands and knees, hitting the floor without a sound. Seraton, I can't get up. Give me a hand here. Her voice came from above the bed.
二次元へようこそ
Welcome to 2D, Taki. I sprang up, only to find myself on the bed like before. My heart was pounding like crazy. My heart was still inside my chest where it should be. I touched every part of my body. It wasn't paper thin. It was still 3D. I couldn't see Seraton anywhere. As it should be.
夢か
Oh, it was a dream. But was that a good thing? Or a bad thing? I let out a sigh. That scene was just like the one in the Dojin I'd bought from Circo Piroporu. In other words, I'd had a delusion using it as a basis. Why hadn't I noticed that in my dream? Well, I knew that it was a dream because I hadn't noticed, but I couldn't help thinking that regardless.
西条さん
Nishijo-san. A voice called to me from the other side of the curtain. The curtain quickly opened and the nurse from before, Hazuki-san, popped her head inside the room.
おはようございます
Good morning. I bowed my head silently, keeping my eyes low.
結局3時間ぐっすりでしたね
You ended up sleeping soundly for 3 hours. Huh? Had I really slept for 3 whole hours? I'd been so lost in my dream that I had completely lost all sense of time. Then again, I was pretty exhausted.
少しうなされていたみたいですけど大丈夫
It sounded like you were having a bit of a bad dream. Is everything alright? Naturally, I couldn't mention my borderline wet dream straight to her face. Admitting to my maxed out libido stat would be pretty embarrassing.
タッキー外出嫌いなのに病院来るなんてす
Go ahead and do the bad delusion this time around. Taki, you're amazing for going to the hospital even though you hate going outside.
ごい私前から思ってたんだけどさタッキーって実はすごく強い男の子だよね
I've been thinking about this for a while now, but like, you're actually super duper strong, aren't you, Taki? Sarah animatedly moved about in my delusion. Her cute voice chirped for me.
私そんなタッキーの強さがす
I really love how strong you are.
それにタッキーは無遊病なんかじゃないよ私毎日タッキーのこと見てるもんだからわかるさ
Also, Taki, you know you don't sleepwalk, right? I watch you every day, so of course I'd know. I'm a gosh darn Taki expert.
三次元女になんか騙されちゃダメだぞ。タッキーには私がいるっしょ。
You can't let those 3D girls trick you. Besides, you've got me here, righto?
またあのコンテナハウスで二人きりで過ごそうね。オッケーなす。
Let's spend time in that container house again, just the two of us. You big dum-dum. Hehe, Seratan. You're so cute, Seratan. She really was my ideal waifu. There wasn't a single woman better than her. 3D, the fuck was that? Ugh, I want to go home already. I want to go home and have Seratan welcome me back with a smile. Wait for me, okay, Seratan? I'll be coming home soon. She opened the door to the examination room and was greeted by the doctor's smiling face.
今日はどうしました？
How can I help you today? Ignoring the question, she examined her surroundings. The examination room was not particularly large. Atop the doctor's desk sat one blank medical chart, and then another that was filled out in a language that was not Japanese. They called her a demon. Everyone did, even her own parents. Had she always been a demon, or did everyone calling her one cause her to become one? After all this time, it did not matter to her either way. Regardless, she had slaughtered 8 people over the past month or so. Society called it madness, casting her actions into the realm of infamy. But from her perspective, they were nothing more than numbers. She was a demon after all.
何か気になりますか？
Is something the matter?
もし気になるものがあるなら言ってください。どかしますから。
If there's anything troubling you, you're welcome to tell me about it. I'll do whatever I can to help. He was very sensitive to the needs of his patients, something befitting of a psychiatrist. Finding this truly heartwarming, she opened the bag she had brought along, and from that bag, she slowly took out a 24-centimeter long kitchen knife.
それとももっと広い部屋に変え。
Or perhaps changing to a more spacious room would. The doctor cut his offer short upon seeing the knife. His face stiffened. Sensing his terror, she gave a gentle smile. The doctor would be the 9th. He had not been her intended target, but she might as well make the most of the opportunity. Placing her bag on the ground, she approached the doctor with long, soundless strides. Then, maintaining her fierce momentum, she flew towards the doctor's chest and plunged the knife deep inside. The knife slipped past his ribcage, reaching his heart. That single thrust had spelled the end of the doctor's life. The doctor, now no more than an object to her, collapsed against her body. For a moment, she supported his weight so that she could remove the knife, and then, once she was done, she knocked the object away with her elbow. The object was lying face up on the floor, its white coat dyed a deep crimson. The nurse who had run over to investigate the commotion let out a scream. In one large step, she trampled over the doctor's corpse and slashed at the nurse with a knife. Fresh blood danced through the air. While it was no fatal wound, it likely etched a rough scar in the docile-looking nurse's face. With a scream, the nurse clutched at her face and crashed to the floor. Oceans of blood spilled from the gaps between her fingers. Ignoring this, she continued toward the back of the examination room. The 10th would not be the nurse. It was a momentous occasion. The 10th, double digits. Though it had to be the target she had originally come for. Everything around her was chaos. The other patients and nurses had long since screamed and ran away. But she did not lend an ear to their cries. She simply searched for him, someone who was most definitely there. Her eyes stopped on a curtain. The curtain was partitioning off a section of the room that was between 2 to 3 square meters large, a section that likely contained a bed. There you are. Her heart trembled with jubilation. The sheer thought of killing him made her nether regions grow hot. She slowly closed the gap between her and the curtain. Then, instead of opening it normally, she slashed it open with a knife. And when she peeked through the newly opened gap, he was lying on the bed, just like she had expected him to be. I found you. Now that she had seen him, she could not contain herself any longer. She pushed her way through the curtain, and now she stood right by the bed. He was sleeping with a slightly pained expression on his face. She combed her fingers through his hair, stroking it ever so gently. He did not awaken. Gripping the knife with both hands, with an underhand grip, she raised her arms high above. Her target was simple, his heart. With a single thrust, just like the doctor before, I'll put you to rest. Overwrought with feelings of pure rapture, with every ounce of strength she had, she swung down the knife. I sprang up, only to find myself on the bed like before. My heart was pounding like crazy. I checked my chest. There was no wound anywhere, nor was there any blood. I was unharmed. I examined my surroundings. The curtain was closed, and it definitely hadn't been slashed open with a kitchen knife. I carefully placed my hand on the curtain, and when I opened it, I saw the doctor and Hazuki-san collapsed on the floor, covered in blood. When that delusion appeared in my mind, I began to tremble all over again.
夢だよな。
That was just a dream. Yeah. But I couldn't work up the courage to open the curtain. What if there was a sea of blood right past it? What if the demon girl was standing there holding a knife? The terror of those thoughts completely incapacitated me. Then, right at that moment, the curtain was opened from the outside. I couldn't help but scream, and I tumbled off the bed.
大丈夫ですか？
Is everything alright?
はい。
Yes? I timidly looked up at her. Hazuki-san was looking down at me with wide eyes. Her white coat had no trace of blood, and her face didn't have any stab wounds either.
ごめんなさい。驚かせてしまって。
I'm very sorry for giving you such a fright.
起きているとは思わなかったので。
I didn't think you were awake, which is why I came in.
いえ。
Oh, yes, well, no. God, I was pathetic. With my head still hanging down, I sluggishly rose to my feet. My heart was beating out of my chest, and it just wouldn't stop. But thank God it had been just a dream. It was like watching a horror movie.
本当に大丈夫？
Are you sure you're alright? Hazuki-san peered at my face, her worry evident. I felt beyond embarrassed, so I couldn't look up at her. Just nodding was the best I could do.
少しうなされていたみたいでしたけど。
You must have been having a bit of a bad dream.
怖い夢を見て。
I had a scary dream.
そう。
I see. What time was it? How long had I slept for? I asked Hazuki-san that very question. Surprisingly enough, I'd slept for a full 3 hours. I guess I'd been more exhausted than I realized. Was he no delusion this time?
タッキー、外出嫌いなのに病院来るなんてすごい。
Taki, you're amazing for going to the hospital even though you hate going outside.
私前から思ってたんだけどさ、タッキーって実はすごく強い男の子だよね。
I've been thinking this for a while now, but you're actually super duper strong, aren't you, Taki? Sarah animatedly moved about in my delusion. Her cute voice chirped for me.
私、そんなタッキーの強さが好き。
I really love how strong you are.
それに、タッキーは無遊病なんかじゃないよ。私、毎日タッキーのこと見てるもん。だからわかるさ。
Also, Taki, you know you don't sleepwalk, right? I watch you every day, so of course I'd know. I'm a gosh darn Taki expert.
三次元女になんか騙されちゃダメだぞ。タッキーには私がいるっしょ。
You can't let those 3D girls trick you. Besides, you got me here, righto?
またあのコンテナハウスで二人きりで過ごそうね。ボケナス。
Let's spend time in that container house again. Just the two of us, you big dum-dum. Hee. Seraton. You're so cute, Seraton. He really was my ideal waifu. There wasn't a single woman better than her. 3D? The fuck was that? Ugh, I want to go home already. I want to go home and have Seraton welcome me back with a smile. Wait for me, okay, Seraton? I'll be coming home soon.
西条さん、起きてください。時間ですよ。
It's time to wake up. Come on, open your eyes. Seraton softly placed her hand on my chest and gently rustled me awake. Ah, now this is the kind of thing I've always dreamt of. Living together with Seraton, I'd have her wake me up every morning wearing nothing but an apron, complete with a wake-up kiss.
西条さん。
I slowly opened my eyes. Someone was looking down on me from above. I accidentally made eye contact with them. It was the nurse, Hazuki-san. I frantically looked around myself. Just like before, I was lying on the hospital bed. So, everything from when Seraton had started talking to me was just a dream?
おはようございます。
Good morning.
結局3時間ぐっすりでしたね。
You ended up sleeping soundly for 3 hours. A full 3 hours? But it felt like I hadn't slept any more than 5 minutes. As I rubbed my eyes in a daze, Hazuki-san glanced at me, before covering her mouth as if she couldn't hold back a smile.
セイラさんって彼女さん？
Is Sera-san your girlfriend?
ずっと寝言でつぶやいていましたから。
You were muttering her name in your sleep the whole time. Even I could tell that I was going pale. I'd made one hell of a mistake. How could I have let someone hear my sleep talking? What's more, of all things I could have said, I'd blurted out Seraton's name. Fuck. This is despair. I want to die.
でも無遊病の症状は結局出ませんでしたよ。
But ultimately, you showed no signs of sleepwalking. As she opened the curtain, Hazuki-san conveyed that to me.
まあ今日はたまたま症状が出なかっただけかもしれないから無遊病でないっていう断定はできないですけど。
Well, it's possible that symptoms didn't occur today by chance, so we can't definitively say that you haven't been sleepwalking. No, I really don't think I'm a sleepwalker, so... More importantly, I had to ask the doctor that really important question. But I couldn't see him anywhere. As I looked around, Hazuki-san handed me a blank form. Not really focusing all that hard, I took it from her and ran my eyes over it. It was a fill-in-the-blank style form.
それはあなたの心理状態を把握するためのチェックシートです。心理テストのようなものね。それを書いてくれたら今日はもう帰っていいって先生が。
It's a checklist to assess your mental condition. It functions more or less like a psychological test, and the doctor said you can go home after filling it out.
先生は
Where's the doctor?
ごめんなさい。ずっと診察が続いてて。
I'm very sorry. He's very busy with other patients right now.
来週まで様子を見て、まだ改善が見られないようならもう一度来てくださいって。
He said to see how things go until next week and to come again if there's no sign of improvement. Then again, it wasn't like he was my primary physician or anything. I suppose he'd probably just given Hazuki-san a bunch of directions to get me out of here. Well, I guess that means there was pretty much no point to me coming to the hospital today. I really wanted to talk to Dr. Takashina about the someone that wasn't me controlling me. Whatever it meant, it was a really chilling symptom, so I didn't want to leave without getting an answer. That being said, I didn't have the courage to demand Hazuki bring him back to see me, especially when she already looked so apologetic. Reluctantly, I decided to give the test a try. Guess I'd write about my symptoms on the back of the sheet or something. If I did that, I should be able to get another examination scheduled for next week.
チェックシートは 質問に対してイエスかノーかだけを答える簡単なものですから。
The test is very simple. Each question you answer with either yes or no.
当てはまる点があったらイエスにチェックしてくださいね。
If the question is applicable to you, please mark the box labeled yes.
今後の西条さんの治療に対する参考にしますから、じっくり考えて答えてください。
It will be used as a reference so we can personalize your treatment going forward, so please consider your answers carefully. Hazuki-san went out of her way to explain the procedure thoroughly. The test had some strange questions mixed in, ones you wouldn't normally expect to run into at a hospital. It really did seem like some sort of psychological test. Would they really be able to actually learn something from questions like these? Hazuki-san stared at me intently. She showed no signs of leaving. But it wasn't like she had nothing else to do or anything. It was more like she was monitoring, watching over me or something. My nervousness at being watched made it hard for me to think clearly, but I guess she was just doing her job. Either way, I knew I ought to fill out the test quickly. When you have business to take care of, you prefer to use emails over phone calls. Your ears ring every now and then. You have felt someone's gaze and turned around before. You have seen objects that are supposedly stationary move for an instant. You have experienced a premonition. While looking at a digital clock in passing, you've seen the same numbers appear in sequence. You have already cried once this month. When masturbating, you can visualize uninterrupted imagery. You can daydream without closing your eyes. The frontal view of a car sometimes looks like a face. You have a hard time going to the bathroom after watching a horror movie. You cannot handle haunted houses. When you start reading books, you become so immersed in it that you lose track of time. You believe that other planets inhabited by human-like creatures exist. The personality attributed to your astrological sign matches your personality perfectly. You are prone to motion sickness. You believe there is a God. You have a strong ability to sense the supernatural. You have dreamed in color before. You have been in a dream in which you knew you were dreaming. You have experienced memory loss. You have a hard time making eye contact with people. Merely the sight of sour food makes your mouth fill with saliva. You feel like yawning when other people do.
はい、お疲れ様でした。
Thank you very much for your time. Hazuki-san thanked me as I answered the final question, despite the fact that I hadn't said anything. I felt pretty embarrassed at being watched the whole time. My face was probably bright red. Because of that, I avoided looking at Hazuki-san when I handed her the test. There had been no time to write my symptoms on the back.
それでは待合室でお待ちください。
Now then, please go wait in the waiting room.
お薬が出てますから。
We'll have your medication out to you in just a few minutes.
薬
Huh? Medication? They were prescribing me something? Dr. Takashina had never said anything about that.
ええ、先生の指示で。弱い精神安定剤です。ぐっすり眠れるようになるし、副作用などもありませんよ。
Yes, as per the doctor's orders. It is a weak sedative. You'll be able to sleep more soundly, and there aren't any side effects. Oh. Wow. Thoughtful as ever, Dr. Takashina. And yet, when I realized I would have to wait in that lobby again, my mood was immediately sent spiraling. By the time I'd gotten back to Shibuya, it was already evening. The hospital was technically in Shibuya Ward, but since Yoyogi was the closest station to it, commuting via train was the fastest. But the Yamanote line had been as crowded as ever, and despite only being 2 stops long, the trip back still made me incredibly tired. Riding the train any farther would have been a pain in the ass, so I decided to get off at Shibuya Station and make my way back to base from there. Even then, there were still tons of people outside the station. I despised crowds. They made my head spin. Not wanting to stay much longer, I tried to speed walk out of the scramble crossing. But even walking straight was nigh impossible. Stumbling even slightly caused people from both behind and in front to bump into me. What's more, a bunch of people handing out pocket tissue packs blocked the way, practically forcing everyone who passed by to take them. Fed up with everything, I ignored the first person handing them out, but took some off the second because at least she was a cute girl. I was so sick and tired of these people handing out tissue packs and shit to push their products. Didn't they have anything better to do than stand right in the middle of the road? Well, whatever. It was free, so might as well take it. Inside the tissue pack I took was a red flyer, and there was a paragraph's worth of shit written on top of it with white ink. Talk about ostentatious, like holy shit. Couldn't exactly miss something with that color scheme. As I walked along, I gave it a quick skim. It was a blood donation flyer. As I read it, I thought back to the form I'd filled out at the hospital. I didn't have any memory of filling out something like that 4 years ago. Maybe the way they examined patients had changed recently. Even then, though, something felt oddly familiar about that test. Deja vu. I'd been getting hit by it all the time recently. Having my mind and body not function the way I wanted them to, the sense of dissonance was an incredibly uncomfortable feeling. So in order to ascertain the true cause behind the deja vu, I tried flipping back through the pages of my memories. And we'll save those memories for next time. But until then, class dismissed.